Hey everyone, I am here live today with Dana Dunford. Dana is the co-founder and CEO at Hemlane. Hi Dana, how are you today?
Hi, Jennifer. Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being back here. So for those that caught Dana's session at the Addicted to ROI Summit about, what was that, 2 weeks ago, she talked all about the rules to remote landlording. And we had so many questions following that session that I wanted to bring Dana back on to share a little bit more about how Hemlane can help you scale your rental portfolio into different markets and how you can get connected with leasing agents and really have a full remote team so that you can scale into other states, because really that's the hot topic for most investors right now. Is we're getting a lot of questions about where to invest, where can my dollars go further, where are people moving to? And so I'm just so excited to have Hemlane as a resource because they're in all 50 states. They can give you access to leasing agents, again, that can help lease up the property. They have a phenomenal property maintenance team that can really kind of take care of everything for you today. So Dana is going to be sharing a case study example, and again, just answering any questions that you might have about the system and the platform, and just kind of walking us through doing a little bit of a deeper dive on how Hemlane works. So Dana, again, thank you so much for being back here with us today.
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, Jennifer. And just to kind of kick it off, I was sort of thinking about when you look at your management options, right? What is the best thing to just like kind of at a high level before I go into a case study, how do you increase your net operating income, right? And kind of the school of thought is like, okay, I can use a property manager because I don't have time for it, or I can do it myself. And when I look at both options in the market, one thing is really clear to me, and there's no right answer, but a lot of people, majority of the market, as you know, 72% self-manage. They go for what they consider the cheapest option that's going to increase their net operating income. And what I've found time and time again is that actually that doesn't really happen. Your time is so much more valuable doing what you're a subject matter expert in and not trying to use your downtime to do your property management. And so while some people think it's like the best option and they put the numbers on paper and they put their property management costs to zero because they're self-managing, really they need to put their cost of their time, the cost of doing mistakes into it, which I'll talk a lot about. And so the solution that we really have for those of you who weren't able to make the Rules to Remote Landlording session, what we've really come up with is something that's in the middle, right? Something where there's not full service, there's not do it yourself. It's something in the middle where when we think you should be involved, you should be involved. And where we think experts, leave it to the experts are involved. We have that. So I'll go through just a case study. I'm going to start with the whole rental life cycle. Go through a case study. I'm just going to talk through it for those of you who are listening, give you some ideas of how Hemlane can help and how you can kind of look at your business and see, am I performing well? So first, let's just start with days on market. Vacancy is one of those things where I find it's the most emotional, because if you have to, the 5th of the month comes and you're paying a mortgage bill and you don't have a tenant in your property and it's been over 30 days, it becomes so emotional that you make terrible decisions. And so days on market, I think is really important. And we track this across Hemlane for properties where our agents are leasing the property. How do we reduce the days on market? And the biggest question to everyone here today is, well, how? Like, why? Why do you have fewer days on market than others? And I actually have a good answer to that based on what I've seen. So typically for us, we see days on market is 11 days. Now, they say if it's under 30, you're doing well, right? You should always have under 30 days. But I do think there's two reasons for that, for why we see 11 days versus the standard, which is about 15 to 30 days. It's heavily dependent on your market. So different markets will see different days on market, but we try to get qualified tenants in there within the 11 days that we have on average. So the case study I'm going to use, it's an owner with 4 rental properties. I'm not doing a big portfolio. We have some of those as well, but just average real estate investor with 4 rental properties. His name is David, just so you guys know. And why with his property did we get 11 days on market? Why did we see that, and what worked? I think it was a combination of using a leasing agent as well as having the owner involved. So with Hemlane, what we do is every day you get a notification as the owner of how many leads you've had, how many applicants you got, trying to make sure that you have traffic and tenants interested in your property. It's just like a sales process. If you go and promote and advertise your service and no one comes to you, then that's a concern. And you have to ask, is it a concern with my marketing efforts? Is it a concern with my channel of where I'm advertising to? We eliminate all of that. We advertise it to over 30 rental listing websites. We respond automatically with the agent's showing calendar, so the tenants don't have to wait 2 days to hear back. So we try to reduce all of that, but by giving you those leads and letting you know who's interested, you can understand demand very easily. And we have cases where I think this is where the model works really well, having a second opinion of a leasing agent, plus you as the remote owner, you can be anywhere in the world, having the two of you take a look and say, I think we don't have enough leads, right? It's been 5 days and we only have one person who's viewed it. That will give you a signal of, okay, maybe we should adjust the price. What do we think we should do? Or maybe our advertising is too restrictive. I do believe having that transparency to the owner is really big, because you're the one at a loss if you have to write that mortgage check the next month. And so I found that to be a really good way to do the leasing is to be collaborative and be transparent.
Then Dina, I love that the system has that baked in, because a lot of times when working with a property manager, you have to ask them for this information, right? And then they have to report back to you. Whereas in Hemlane, you can really see everything and just log in at your leisure as an investor, is log in and see how much activity. I'm really excited to share. We had a client of ours who's also a Hemlane client who had 25 applications in 4 days on a brand new construction in Nampa, Idaho, and she had a signed lease agreement, within 4 days. So that was really fantastic, and she could tell that obviously 25 applications in 4 days was fantastic. But I love the transparency of the system, so I just wanted to add that. And then also too, to point out, in addition to that mortgage payment, you're also paying the utilities, right? So it can be, vacancy is incredibly expensive. So I'm so glad that you led with the conversation of the time to lease and this vacancy conversation, because I think that investors oftentimes when they're running their analysis, they're maybe using 5 or 6% for vacancy, and that's not really telling the full picture. Because if it sits for more than 30 days, then that's really, it's more than 8%.
Yep, exactly. And then it becomes emotional because you select a bad tenant. So one other thing that we do in the system is provide that data of the tenant's information of who's come in. We've seen some properties that we've had, it's not going to be the case study I have, but a side note of some properties where we get so many applicants, none of them are qualified. And we're actually seeing that happen more and more in certain markets. Like Cleveland is a big one, where agents are finding it much more difficult to find quality tenants. Whereas like a year ago, if you looked at the data, we were getting qualified tenants, same credit score requirements, same income requirements. So markets change and we're constantly looking at that. But having that data of like who's qualified, if you're not emotional because you have so many leads, you have this transparency up front, you're able to adjust things pretty quickly to understand how do we really grow our applicant pool and get people qualified. You don't get to this emotional state where it's 40 days on market. You have one tenant who's applied, who's not qualified, and you say, you know what? I'm just going to rent to them anyway.
He has 3 dogs.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I do think it's really important, that transparency, and agents, especially top ones, they're busy, right? They have inbound, always people referring. They don't have time every Friday night to come talk to you because that's the only time that you have to talk to them. But you can go online and see all their notes, everything logged, everything going on to say, how are things working here? So that's the days on market. The next thing I want to talk about, which I think is the biggest, is property management and the cost of that. Like I said, I think the cheapest solution is always not the best, right? So I don't think you should be choosing the cheapest solution. Also, always the most expensive. That's where you get white glove service. And some people want that. They kind of want it to be where they go to a 5-star hotel. They know that they're charged a lot, $10 for a bottle of water, and they don't care. But when it's your investment property, I think that you do want something in the middle where you have both quality and it's cost effective, right? And so Hemlane does that. So for David, our property management fee, just so you know, it's $34 base and $40 per unit. So for his 4 units, he's paying us $2,328 a year. His rentals on average, it's just over $1,500. So I'll just round down to $1,500. So he has $1,500 on his units. And so if you look at the rent that he gets $72,000 a year. Okay. And so if you look at the fee for us, it's about 3%. So a lot of people with large apartment complexes, yours behind you that you have there, Jennifer, you can get 3%. But when you're a smaller investor, you don't get 3%. You're being charged 10%. And so with Hemlane, you're actually able to get that quality where you still have a local professional when you really need them, but you also have a reduced fee on that management side. And again, I don't think that the cheapest option of your self-management is the best, because you'll make mistakes along the way. You won't get to repair requests fast enough. You'll forget that to properly vet the service professionals, maybe sending out someone who's not licensed, whatever it may be. We kind of build those best practices in place so that we can still provide that 5-star service, but also make sure that you get the return on investment that you really want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think for the investor, your best time is actually spent analyzing deals, right? And not actively managing your property. I mean, if we look at Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow quadrant, I mean, actively managing your property, that's really in the self-employment category, right? And so if you can focus on, working on the investor side, turn your, rentals over into, Hemlane, and having the system really run your rentals so that you can do what you do best, which is finding more deals, building more passive income.
Yep. And then the other thing I would say with it, the other thing I see, like when you're looking to increase your net operating income, the other thing I think is huge is repair costs, right? And again, when we send out a service professional, they're not going to be the cheapest who's going to forget to do something and suddenly there's a disaster in your home. They're also not going to be the most expensive. And so I'll take David's property again as an example. Actually, 2 of them have home warranty and 2 do not. And with the home warranty one, it's actually really interesting because we had a situation with one of these homes. It was in Texas, kind of close to where you're sitting there, Jennifer. And there was a situation where there was flooding, the weather stripping was gone, right? And working with that home warranty company, we were actually able to push back on them. They said they wouldn't cover it. We said, oh, you will cover this. Here's why. I'm able to push back, make sure they 100% covered it. David never had to get involved at all. And on top of that, then make sure that everything was done properly. And those hour-long calls with the home warranty, he never had to sit on. We did all of that, make sure we got approval. We actually got our own vendor out and they paid for it because we knew our vendor would be better. And they paid for it all. And he didn't have any problems with it. So it's one situation. With the other properties that aren't on home warranty, in any case, we always do troubleshooting. And a lot of times you'll see that 20% of our cases get closed from tenant requests coming in. it's because we're able to get the tenant to fix the problem. So about 20% are basically from going through and telling the tenant, here, we're going to walk you through how to fix this, and then able to close it without the owner getting involved. So I think also on the repair side, when you look at like another category line item on your net operating income, that is also super important to be mindful of.
Dana, I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I've actually seen most property managers do not get involved with home warranties or appliance warranties. And so it's so great to hear that Hemlane will offer that as a service, because that can kind of be a lot of back and forth and a lot of time spent in trying to negotiate with these companies to make do on a policy that you purchased. So that's really exciting to hear that that you do that.
We have the major ones on speed dial. I will tell you, we go through and like have all the requests right on one, like where it's like, okay, here's the next request, American Home Shield, here's the next one, here's the next one. I will say with it, people always ask, should I have home warranty for my property? Without going into too many details on it, like me personally, I wouldn't, for various reasons, and that I can go to in a different time. But if that's what you've decided to do with your property, and that peace of mind that you have a monthly payment, and the most you will pay is your $89, $79, whatever it is, service call. Our goal is to make sure that that's what you pay, and to make sure that when we're talking to them, because we can speak their language, when they say, oh, well, based on page 28, paragraph 4, this is not covered, for us to say, yeah, but this other aspect of it is covered, and this is all related. So you definitely do need to make sure to resolve this. And so certain things like that, we definitely work through. With the home warranty companies, it's interesting because when we do work with them, we do also ask for more details on the invoice of like breakdown, what happened, why, just like we do with our other service professionals.
And is that the same with insurance companies? So if there's an insurance claim, will Hemlane work with that insurance company on behalf of the owner?
We do. Most times the insurance company asks for the owner to be involved because they need the owner's approval, and the owner is on their contract. So while we'll work to get anyone out there like assessing the damage or whatever it is, we will basically go through and coordinate all of that, but the owner will still have to be a little involved. There's not much difference. So that's what people say between Hemlane and full service, of you're going to still have to be involved no matter what. Insurance is an interesting one, because we always warn when we get owners involved, especially with water damage, our first questions to them are like, okay, it's right at the point where you might want to get your insurance involved. What are you going to do? Here's the damage. Exactly. What's your deductible? Because if we get a water restoration company out there, you know this is going to be $500 minimum. So before we do, what's your deductible? What are you thinking? Here are your alternatives. Let us know. And that way there's no surprises. And then we can really work together on what's the best solution for you and for your property and your tenants, I think, which are the most important in all cases.
Would you recommend that investors purchase the warranties, the additional warranties on appliances?
You mean if you're going with a home warranty company?
No, so appliances for, warranties for appliances. So, you know, when you buy a brand new appliance, you can buy the extended warranty that's for 5 years that'll cover, you know, labor and service and parts. Would you recommend that an investor purchase that policy?
Yeah, I haven't personally. I never have. I always do just standard warranty. I have seen investors who have, but typically the appliances you're purchasing, the cost of them is also, you see, very competitive over time, like 5 years ago versus today. So like you can now get some appliances for like $300. I think it's almost better to just replace out with the latest technology is changing too, rather than getting that extended. But I have seen investors do that, and that's fine. We'll work with them on that extended warranty.
Fantastic. Great. So let's talk about, I think some of the questions that we had last time were, you know, what areas does Hemlane cover? And then if you don't have leasing agents in an area, does that, will you find one for an investor, or what is an investor? What would the expectation be for an investor that's looking to expand into a new market?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing, I mean, we work in any area, especially where investors are going, because if you're a savvy investor, you're looking for markets that grow, right? You're looking for ones that where there are good jobs, growing market, everything from like macro and then micro neighborhood trends. So usually, I mean, sometimes we have to say no if it's a property where the population is 4,000 and it's not growing. We have to say, no, we really can't do that because we won't get quality folks. Like you just literally can't find quality service professionals as well as leasing agents. However, that happens very seldom because most people, especially Jennifer, in your group, are going to be investing in places that are growing, population trends, et cetera. So what will happen is if we don't have an agent, we might have one most likely on our platform who uses Hemlane. Mm-hmm. And here's why. We partner with like Keller Williams, Remax, et cetera, where they promote to agents to use Hemlane for their own management. And what ends up happening is they use Hemlane. We actually use internal data to understand how good they are. For their own properties, how many days on market? How quickly do they respond to tenants? So we're using internal data to understand how good they are. So a lot of times we can get it through our network. Other times other owners on Hemlane are referring agents onto Hemlane for us. Sometimes we have it where an owner comes with an agent they purchased the property from, and we always tell them, ask that agent if they'll do the leasing for free, the first lease up. Because they usually do, and then you've just saved on a leasing agent cost, and we'll onboard them onto the platform for free, do all of that. And then if we are providing an agent to you, we always look to provide at least 2 options. So we look to provide a minimum of 2, where you can pick and choose what agent you want, but we vetted them. We know how many years of leasing experience they have, how good they are, what their reviews are, spoken with referrals, everything to make sure when we're making that recommendation, it's not wasting your time.
I think another really great benefit about your program is that the agents are actually meeting these people in person. Yeah. I am not a big fan. I understand the technology and I understand the leverage behind the Rently boxes, but the downside is, you know, if a property manager or, you know, a leasing agent has never met met them in person, I think that there's some potential missed red flags there. And so I love that the leasing agents meet people in person, and also that there's a pre-screening process with the application so that the agent is also not wasting their time. Because I think a lot of investors, they often don't ask that question to the property manager of like, is anyone meeting these people, or, you know, how are these tenants, you know, screened? And I think that it's so important that the leasing agent or somebody, you know, actually meets the person.
Yeah, I've had a lot of investors ask who use Hemlane, why don't you just have Rently integration? Why don't you guys have that? And the point for us is we want people to know someone physically has to be there in real estate. And we are not going to be the company that promotes that everything can be remote. You can be remote as the owner and operator, you can be anywhere in the world, but you physically need someone there. And we don't want people to get the wrong impression of that, which is why we haven't promoted those services. There may be a day in the future where it's very clear you require a leasing agent and you have a Rently box or whatever, and it reduces cost of and time of agents going out potentially, but like, that's not what we're about at this point. And agents will find things. Also, agents meet with owners. I just had an agent send to me 2 days ago her steak dinner with one of her investors from Hemlane, that they were having dinner together. And, you know, that type of thing of just promoting people in real estate getting together like you do, Jennifer, I think is important.
Absolutely. And who is responsible for taking photos?
It's always the agent. The agent takes photos, although we have service professionals. Like if they're on site, they will take photos for us as well. For annual inspections, we typically use agents for those. However, we've had cases where handymen go out and take photos and they'll fix things while they're out there, which is not necessarily a bad thing as long as you trust that person that is doing it.
And then who is, like, let's say a tenant moves out, and there's some repairs that are needed to be done in order to do the make ready to get ready for a new tenant. Who is responsible for that activity?
That's where we actually require the agents that we work with to do that. And here's why. If we ourselves, so we do in-tenancy repair coordination, but if we ourselves are sending someone out and we don't have someone to check off and say, yes, this has been done, by the time you hand over those keys to the tenant, who's your customer, they're going to be like, wait, that wasn't done. That wasn't done. So by having the agent do that whole process of leasing and the make ready, they essentially know that when they hand over those keys to the tenant, it's in the condition they would want their home to be in. And it's very similar to like if you're selling a property as well, same thing. If you want it to be ready for move-in, and when you want to hand over those keys, you are on the line if it's not correct. So we actually work with the agents on those. A lot of our agents give us also great contractors for when it's in tenancy. We use a lot of their contractor networks as well. Fantastic.
And then let's talk a little bit about, what is a typical lease up fee, and then who provides the lease?
Yeah, so the lease up fee depends on where your property is located and who the agent is. We do not price set. Whatever the agent's rate is what you get. Typically, it's between 75% to 100% of 1 month's rent. We've also seen cases where some agents, it's based on the state and laws. We've seen agents do like price per showing, price per, oh, you just need me to manage this inspection. You've already got a tenant for the property. They'll break down their prices into certain things. But typically, if you want to be 100% hands off, it would be that fee. We do not take a cut of what the agents make for two reasons. One, we don't want to work with an agent just because they give us a portion of what they make. We want to work with someone because they're the best. That's number one. And then number two, we don't price set because the second we do that, then again, we're not working with the best. The best will set their own prices. And so that is super important to us, but every agent's rates will vary. And it's actually interesting. Sometimes people say, oh, can I just pay them to open the door and do the showings and nothing else? It actually is not a great experience for your customer, the tenant. Usually the tenant wants to talk to one person, do the lease with one person, all that negotiation. They don't want to like, oh, but I already told this person this, but then this is going over here. So it's much easier to have one person for the process. And then for the lease and the lease document, you have options. Usually the agent's going to provide it. They're going to use their association's lease. If it's a place like San Francisco or Seattle, where you're from, you're going to have a specific county lease just because of tenant landlord law, and they will provide that. If you are doing your own lease up on Hemlane and you are going out and showing the property, we have a lot of owners who do that, especially when they first purchase, like the one in Nampa you had mentioned, where they go out and they're already there and they'll do the leasing. We do have services that provide state-specific leases to you, and you're welcome to use those as well. And then sometimes real estate investors come to us with their own lease from their real estate attorney.
And then who sets the criteria?
For criteria for the property pre-qualification, we put recommendations in the system of credit score and income to rent ratio, and obviously no evictions. If there's an eviction on the record, it means not only did they go to court, but they lost in court, which is very bad. So we will go through with what the criteria are that we recommend. You and your agent may change that criteria. Based on whatever you change, we're calculating out a score of their income and credit worthiness of how can they pay, and then also their credit, and the devil's in the details. So looking at the details of that, of do we think this person will be able to pay their rent? And then we provide a recommendation based on all that data.
Fantastic. Well, Dana, this is such great information. Is there any parting thoughts or any final tips for investors that are thinking about working with Hemlane?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing is just reach out to our team. You can reach out to us at info@hemlane.com. You can also reach out to me at dana@hemlane.com. We'd love to hear from you. And even if you're just saying, hey, I'm thinking about going into this market, anything like that, we'd love to connect.
And if you have any questions for Dana, she will be in the group answering any questions on this thread. So ask away. She is there ready to help you guys. Thank you, Dana, so much for being here today. And I am so excited to see, a lot of investors taking action and feeling comfortable investing remotely now using Hemlane. So thank you so much for being here today.
Great. Thanks so much for having me.